I use a very simplified approach. I often find that when people are drawing eyes, they create the top lid as an arc, and that can create issues. I prefer to break the eye up into 3 sections of straight lines, allowing me to assess the length and angle of each line. So when I'm drawing the eye, I look at the length and angle of the line nearest to the tear duct, subjectively imagining a separate upper line between the tear duct and the lateral line. I straighten this out and try to relate the distance between the 2 lines. I assess the angle and length of the tear duct line, the angle and length of the top line, and the angle and length of the lateral line of the eye. This lateral line is often longer than the tear duct line and sits higher in the eye socket. The tear duct will generally sit lower than the lateral side of the eye. Having these 3 lines also means I can locate where the iris may intersect one of them. Most often, it will intersect the line coming from the tear duct, meeting the top line of the eye. Often this is where the iris will start. I then look to see where the other side of the iris begins. This allows me to get the iris proportionally correct. At this point, I'll check whether the white space on each side of the iris matches what I'm seeing in my subject. Often when students are drawing eyes, they look lifeless. This usually comes down to a lack of proper shading. You need to first assess where the light is coming from, and apply light and shadow accordingly. This will immediately create a more lifelike drawing. Imagining the light coming from one direction, it will hit the eye at the highest point nearest the light source. The eyelid will create a shadow on the uppermost part of the eye, when the light is coming from above. Notice that I place the highlight on the edge of the pupil. I never place it in the middle, as it tends to cause a hypnotic or bullseye look. We'll often find multiple highlights, with one to the side of the pupil, which can turn the eye slightly away from the viewer. I still like to have one highlight intersect the pupil. The pupil itself can also cause that hypnotic look. To avoid this, I blend the pupil into the shadow under the eyelid. This changes its shape and helps prevent that effect. The iris is actually a gelatinous, transparent structure. If the light is coming from one side, it travels through the iris. Knowing this helps create a more realistic look. The side facing the light will be lighter in value, while the opposite side will be darker. You can add an additional level of realism and further disguise the shape of the pupil. I also want to attract the viewer to the eye area, so I look for opportunities to create strong darks. The extreme dark of the pupil will draw attention, as will the dark ring around the iris. The eyeball is similar to a large sphere, like a golf ball, with a curved surface that creates high and low points. As light travels across this surface, it creates shadows toward the edges and lighter areas toward the high point. The lateral corner of the eye is generally a little darker, caused by the eyelashes beginning to turn away from us. This creates a darker edge and a slightly thicker line toward the center of the eye, where the eyelashes face us. This effect is reduced. The spherical shape of the eye also creates a shadow effect around it, particularly the skin beneath the eye. This occurs because the surface curves away from the light source, making it progressively darker. The shadow value will vary gradually from light to dark. I use this gradation to extend the shadow to just beneath the iris. I may use an eraser to remove a thin section of shading below the iris to create the lower lid line. Sometimes, I extend this toward the corner of the eye. We often see part of the lower lid's surface, depending on the lighting. I may also lift a bit of light from the corner and extend a small line from the lateral edge to suggest this exposed surface. Moving to the tear duct, it is often slightly convex and may have a small highlight. It tends to have a keyhole shape, then rounds out as it transitions into the sclera and toward the iris. Something people don't give enough attention to is the skin fold above the eye. It's very important to get this as accurate as possible because it strongly affects likeness. Its spacing, start, and end points vary, and these subtle differences are important to capture.
Because the eyeball is rounded, parts of the skin areas around the eye turn away from the light, making them appear darker, especially on the lateral side, where there may also be a cast shadow from the nose. As you move toward the high point of the form, it becomes progressively lighter. I use darker values around the corners of the eye to avoid harsh hatching lines caused by the skin fold above the eye.
Many people struggle to make eyelashes look realistic. They often appear too long or too isolated. Instead, draw them in small triangular groupings, breaking them up with a few individual lashes at varying angles. Avoid overdoing them, as less can look more natural. As lashes move toward the lateral side, they tend to appear more unified, creating additional shading in the corner of the eye. Keep the direction of light in mind, and you'll naturally identify where shading is needed. Another common mistake is making the whites of the eyes uniformly white. In reality, one eye can be darker depending on the light direction, and there can even be variation across the sclera itself. Careful observation of these effects adds life to your drawing. When developing shadows, it's important to build them gradually. Start with the mid-tone and slowly deepen the values. Avoid going too dark too quickly. This will give you a more natural, progressive result. As you can see, I've gone darker on the lateral side due to the eyelashes. The shadow under the eye extends toward each corner and blends slightly into the pupil to reduce that hypnotic effect. I also darken the top line to draw the viewer's eye. Then I refine the shading around the eye. If you focus on using straight lines first, to establish structure rather than defaulting to an almond shape, you'll achieve a more realistic result. Breaking the eye into sections helps you better understand proportions and overall form. Try to study close-ups of eyes as much as possible. Observe where light and shadow are most apparent and aim to replicate that. Always draw what you see, not what you think you see. That's key to improving your work. I hope this is helpful. I'll be covering more topics like shading, simplification, and focal point composition in future videos. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.